We are the gym that teaches people how to move instead of just exercise, because we believe that health is about performance, not just body image.
Let's rock. If you're new to the tribe, Rad is across the table, Rich is behind the mix. My name is Yanni Burmeister, and we are Unity Gym, experts at turning driven people into athletes. This episode is brought to you by the Unify Movement System, the online program that balances strength, flexibility, and fitness in an efficient 60-minute workout so you can unleash your inner athlete. Get daily coaching by us, plus our epic gym and home UMS programs, extensive exercise library, private coaching group, and weekly coaching calls. As a valued listener, use the link in the description to get your first month free. Before we get started, warm welcome as usual. If you're watching on the Unity Gym YouTube channel, remember to hit that like button to support the channel and subscribe if you like what you see. I'm excited to announce that joining us today, we have Phil White from ADPT Physio.
Yep. Phil started work in the fitness industry in 2012, first as a remedial massage therapist, and then went on to study exercise and sports science and a doctor of physiotherapy postgraduate degree. Now he runs ADPT Physio, where they specialize in delivering the athlete rehab experience to everyone. Phil has been a massage therapist to the GWS Giants AFL team, Olympians, Paralympians, and a number of other professional athletes. Welcome to the show, Phil. Always good to have you here, man.
Yeah, thanks. Good to be here. And we're talking about something that is, I guess, not what people usually would think a physio would be looking at. If we look at the old school approach of physio being sort of diagnosis and then poking and prodding, but we're talking about sleep today. And that's actually a really big part of, one understanding
this
of
is something that I'm an expert on this topic as well.
Yeah, and something with like, as Rad just said, like my business is called ADPT, and that's about the athletic development, physical therapy, and I think sleep is one of the things that athletes have really started to value, like in recent times, and we're talking about napping today, which is a athlete superpower. If you
I want to even just go deep on sleep in general. It's funny, as soon as we start talking about sleep, I start yawning. But this question comes in from Blakely Hernage from the UMS online coaching group. And Blakely asked, are daytime naps beneficial for training performance if you already get plenty of sleep? Now, I can't attest to daytime naps because they don't personally work well for me. It takes me too long to get to sleep and to wake up. But Rad takes daytime naps every day. And, I sort of first became aware of the concept after reading a bunch of, I really used to idolize Warren Buffett. Investing and finance and economics is something that I'm a little bit passionate about. And Warren Buffett, in one of his biographies, they talk about the fact that for his whole professional career, he has a leather couch in his office, and he takes a daytime nap every afternoon, early afternoon, and it's just everyone just understands and accepts it now and expects it, and he does it every single day, and he says he couldn't live without it. And then when I started working with my brother Rad, he was just absolutely complaining about how he just falls apart and crumbles mid-afternoon, and started to have daytime naps at work. And initially it used to drive me insane. And honestly, the only reason why I sort of accepted it was because I read that Warren Buffett does it as well. Otherwise I would have just been banging a drum over his head going, wake up, it's time to work. But the reality is that it just is really, really beneficial for certain people.
And what's really cool about that story about Warren Buffett is that if you combine the story that Elon Musk plays video games, it's actually coming to fruition that my habits that everybody rags on me for are the habits of the world's most successful people. So follow me for more great life hacks like playing video games and daytime napping.
Naps.
But look, my personal experience, it's quite funny. If I talk about what you just said, Yanni, I do get to it doesn't happen every day. But
before we get onto daytime naps, I would prefer to talk about the importance of sleep in general and restedness.
Well, can I just comment on what you just said about me first, and then we can talk about
you're never allowed
sleep?
to comment about what of course you can.
So my the demands of running a business and what we do here, and that honestly, for me, including my training, when I'm at the gym, I am just on, and a lot of it is really mentally engaging, just talking with people and having to solve problems and things like that. And I get up really early not really early, but for what a lot of people consider really early. And I just get to a point in around lunchtime. It's usually after I have a meal, my first big meal of the day, is that immediately get a dive in my energy levels.
And when talking to you, you can actually see your eyes start glazing over.
Oh, like man, and I just and
like you get your eyes really open, but they just kind of go.
And I just lose mental clarity. I just really can't do anything. And I've just found that when I have a anywhere from a 20 to 40 minute nap, it really gives, like, it'll take me 10 minutes to come back from that, but it sets me up for the afternoon of being really switched on again. And if I don't do that, the whole afternoon is just rubbish. And it's funny because if I go back to when I first started doing that, it was when I was in the army. I remember when I joined the army and somebody who I knew, I can't even remember who it was, but who had been in the army before. And I said, have you got any advice for me? And this piece of advice stuck with me through my whole military career. He said, eat when you can and sleep when you can. And before I joined, I didn't really get it. But once I was in, I really got it, because there are times when you don't get to sleep for days on end. But then there are times when you're sitting around doing absolutely nothing and you're just waiting to be told you've got to get up and move. And I was the only person probably out of our whole platoon who used to, when we were sitting around, I used to just lay there and just have a nap and and sometimes I'd lay there for 3 hours and people used to make fun of me, but then we'd get up and have to work for 2 days straight without stopping, and I was a lot more energized than everybody else. And so that's my personal experience with it. It absolutely does help me. And I've also heard that there's been studies where they say that 20 minutes of a daytime nap can make up for some lost sleep. Have you guys heard of that?
I have, yeah. And really what it comes down to, and there's a component of Blakely's question here that is quite important, which is if you already get plenty of sleep. Because you know, if you already get plenty of sleep, then if it makes you feel better, go and do it. You know, I'm kind of the belief that the more quality sleep you can get, the better for performance. And it's something that, you know, you think about. I always think about a lion in the Serengeti. They eat, sleep, hunt, and procreate, basically. You know, and you know, they're the king of the jungle. They perform very well in those four things, you know, generally. So you want to just get as much good quality sleep as you can. Now, I have often really battled with sleep, and it's something that I'm continually training myself to get better sleep. I just have issues with it, and I always have, and that's why one of the main reasons why I wear a wearable constantly. And I've experimented with Oura, the Ring, and also the Fitbit that I've got on now. And I've pulled up my little report here, and you know, one of the main reasons why I adopted these things, which I now use for many things as well, but it was to track my sleep and monitor my sleep, because that which is tracked and monitored can be improved best. And it's actually quite interesting when you start to look at your sleep. Like, you're meant to get a couple of hours or an hour and a half, 90 minutes of deep restorative sleep every night. And I average like 30 to 40 minutes, you know, and I've been doing little bits of experimentation lately with certain things, and it really does change. Like, if I look at last night's sleep, I got 40 minutes of deep, I got 6 hours and 21 minutes of light sleep, 20 minutes of REM, and for 1 hour 53 minutes I was awake, tossing and turning, and going to the bloody toilet last night.
Just an important caveat with wearables, like, they are quite variable. The wearables are variable in how accurate they are, and so it's and there's even like the kind of top rated ones are still not going to be as good as a sleep study where you're wearing like brain monitoring devices. So I think it's just important to I think they're a great tool, and I use my Garmin as well for it, and I track it, and I really closely monitor it as well. But just keep in mind that they're not always going to be 100% accurate about the stages of sleep. But I think that, you know, if you're wearing the same one over time, it's quite a good like intra variability. So like within yourself, like looking at changes. But yeah, just something that would highlight, that it's really good for kind of like time slept, and I pay a lot of attention to the phases of sleep as well that my wearable says, but they're not as 100% accurate as it would be nice if they were. But definitely still worth thinking about.
So yeah, that I think.
Well, just quickly on the types of sleep there. So you mentioned like deep, light, and REM. So they're kind of the sleep stages that we think about. And so it's quite common to have like quite a few hours of that lighter sleep. With the deep sleep, that's where you're kind of getting that like real physical restorative things going on. So within like the actual structure of your body, and with the REM, that's where you're kind of going through a lot of the mental processing. So I think it's just kind of interesting to have that understanding about like what the different phases are.
And we go through those phases every 90 minutes, don't we? Isn't that how it works?
Yeah, you go through this cycle.
But then,
cycles,
over the course,
roughly 90 minutes.
Yeah, so sleep cycles are 90 minutes, but then you'll notice that if you look at the like your stages, that you'll generally have most of your deep sleep pretty much at the beginning of your night, and then the REM will come in later in the evening. So it's really like, and that's because basically when you're first getting sleep, like that physical restoration is like your body's priority, because you're like, geez, we need to make sure we're keeping the body ready to go. And then the REM is it kind of comes more towards the end of the night. So that's what really happens with a lot of people who don't get that sort of 7+ hours sleep, is they'll often cut themselves short of that REM, and that's where you can start to kind of stack like mental issues with memory retention, and basically a lot of brain function can be impacted longer term.
Yeah, right.
For it. So Yanni pointing out there, like I've been also really looking into my sleep lately, especially with the amount of kind of fairly intense training I'm doing. But also I've just had a real issue with, like, I've always slept for ages. Like I've always, like, if I don't set an alarm, I can easily sleep 10 hours night after night after night. But I'm always so heavy on the
incredible
REM side. But then the issue is I wake up feeling absolutely wrecked, and then I still want to have a nap by the mid-afternoon. So I'm really looking into this because it's so annoying. Like,
look, I'm exactly the same.
Yeah, and so even if I get used to waking up and sleeping 7 hours a day and waking up at 6 a.m. Every morning, like I never kind of get used to that. But anyway, basically I've been looking to it a lot as well, and I'm really on the REM side of things. So I wake up every morning feeling like I've just been in this like crazy adventure, and I've just had, like, I get up to like 4 hours of REM some nights. Like, it's insane.
Yeah,
just
that's crazy.
like I'm in this sort of other world, and just wake up feeling cooked because I've just been off an adventure. And
that's why you're such a dreamer.
There's so many ideas.
Pun intended. No.
Yeah, so that's just give you a bit of idea of the sleep stages. But do you want to go into the naps?
Yeah, well, let's go through to give some like real value. Let's go through things that, for those of you out there who may be struggling, unlike Blakely, who may be struggling with sleep or not getting high quality sleep. Let's have a look at some factors that can really impact your sleep.
Can I just like that kind of ties into with Blakely's question, like the idea of adding in naps if you're already well rested. Like that's totally fine unless it then starts to impact your ability to then have a full night's sleep. So a lot of like kind of people think like, oh, if I can just get like more sleep accumulated throughout the day, then that's good. But then if you then get to, your regular bedtime and you're like, I cannot get to sleep to save my life, then that's where it starts to become really problematic.
So I've created, because this is something I've been working on for the last decade of my life, I've created 5 rules to sleep, to optimal sleep. And I've experimented with a lot of things. Those who, if you go back a year ago and watch the podcast, I was wearing these funky orange glasses. They're blue light blocking glasses, which I still have, that I wore for weeks and weeks and weeks, because that can impact your sleep. And I've done a lot. And so my 5 like absolute rules that you must abide by to get high quality sleep is my first and foremost is exercise. On the days that I exercise, and I exercise to a medium to a high intensity, I will sleep much better on those days. And the exercise for me has to be early in the day, in the first half of the day. If I exercise in the second half of the day, it often leads to I struggle to wind down to get prepared to sleep, because my body sort of releases adrenaline and endorphins, things like that. I have a warm shower within an hour of going to sleep, and that seems to really soothe and sort of calm me down. And there is some pretty good research to prove that is a really nice way of just signaling to the body, okay, it's getting ready for sleep time. And coinciding with that, just prior to that, I turn a lot off in my house. I turn as many lights as I can off. I actually now have a Philips Hue lighting system in my place, where I can choose the tone of light. So I can turn blue light off and turn the light into like a caramel or yellow color, which is a lot more soothing for the brain. I start to switch off screens, so laptops. So first of all, it's that exercise. Second of all, it's the hot shower. Third, it's the blue light restriction. So I turn any sort of white fluorescent lights off in the apartment. I only have yellow light. And the fourth one is that I then, for the last hour that I'm awake, I read a book. I'm not watching a screen, which is really, really important for me. And then the fifth is that my bedroom is a bat cave. It is dark, it is cold, and there is minimal electronic devices in my bedroom to interfere with my my body's neurological rhythms. And that is really important. A lot of people, you've got to look at the environment that you're creating for sleep. And Tony Vataji was the person who got me onto this, who we've had on the podcast before. You know, he said your bedroom is for two things: sleep and procreating, sex. Sleep and sex, that's it. It's not for watching television. It's not for working on your computer. It's not for, you know, anything else. And the only thing that I've got in my room other than a couple of bedside lamps is a fan. And that fan is cooling me down. Now, I would love to, my next evolution of the sleep experimentation is to add a chili pad to my bed, which is a sheet, a specially designed sheet that actually regulates the temperature of your bed, because people have different optimal sleep temperatures. And that's probably what I'm going to add to my bat cave as soon as I can afford it. For the size bed that I've got the biggest bed on the face of the earth. It's about $2,500 for the chili pad. So I just have to add that. I've already spent about 10 grand on my bed. So
yeah, it's a cool thing where there's so much genetic variability around sleep, and like you have to go through your intense, elaborate setup, and obviously all those sleep hygiene, like that's a term that has kind of been coined and been popularized recently, and I think like most people probably be aware of it, but it's quite cruel that, you know, some people will be able to just like put their head down on any piece of junk and without going through all that, and they'll get really good quality sleep. So it is just, there's so much genetic variability of it, and so, but these are great tools if you are having any issues there.
Yeah, and I think, like, to circle back to Blakely's question, are daytime naps relevant if you're already getting plenty of sleep? Personally, for me, there are days where I don't have a daytime nap, and those are the days when I've had plenty of sleep. And I just basically listen to my body. I'm a big advocate of just seeing how I feel and then listening to that and acting on that. And on those days where I'm really struggling and I'm getting to it, I've learned that if I just lay down and set myself an alarm for, usually I'll do it for about 25 minutes. And the reason why I do that is because I've heard that these daytime naps that you can have, that to get the full benefit of it, where it can actually make up for some lack of sleep, that you have to nap for 20 minutes. And they've even got these sleep capsules that people use in workplaces. I've heard that they've got them like at Google, where you go and you sit down in it and it goes for 20 minutes and dims the lights and puts on some really relaxing music or something for you. I've never been to Google headquarters, but I've heard that that's what they've got there. And so for me, the reason why I choose like 25 minutes or so is that I find that it's quite hard for me to just switch off all my thoughts just immediately. And so by doing that, I usually find I can, most days, I actually do fall asleep. And then I'll wake up. And what I mean by that is there's a period of time where it makes me feel like I've been laying there for 5 minutes, but then my alarm goes off and I realize that I did actually fall asleep for it. And it did take practice for me to get there. There was many, many years where I would lay there and nothing would happen. And I just used it as an opportunity to practice meditation. I would just say, well, you know what, at least I'm laying here with my eyes closed, and I'm going to try to practice what I've learned from meditation, which is just to basically just recognize what I'm experiencing in my consciousness and not judge it and allow it to pass through. And over time, I've been able to have a really great result from a daytime nap. And yeah, going back to what my point is here, it's really if I need it. And if I don't need it, there'll be days when I just don't have it. You know?
Yeah. And so with looking at professional athletes again, like it is a really common tactic they use, but you know, it's quite nice because for most professional athletes, they have training to do in the day and recovering to do in the day, and usually not too much else. And so they definitely will utilize it, and it's a great way of enhancing your recovery and giving you that extra downtime. And as we talked about so much with training adaptations, it's stimulus plus recovery equals adaptation. So it's a good one to add in there, but only if it then doesn't affect the rest of your sleep. And just an interesting one on looking at athletic performance and sleep, like there's been some research to show that like you'll be able to get like the highest power outputs and the highest intensity stuff you can do is actually suited towards the afternoon, which is kind of surprising for a lot of people, but that's looking at like as a general sense. But then you train your body to perform at certain times. So if you become a morning trainer and you always train in the morning, then your personal preference is always going to be like when you train. And so it's quite an interesting challenge for athletes when they, if they're playing professional sports, have to play at night. Then if they're doing all the training in the morning, then it's like this sort of interesting challenge of trying to get that kind of optimal situation where it's like you don't want to be impacting your sleep, but you also want to be training to the right sort of time, because then it's going to impact your circadian rhythms. And then for Olympians who have to travel overseas, or for professional athletes traveling overseas, like if you have to think about like your time zones as well. And so yeah, it's quite interesting just how like your body you'll have like a certain chronotype, which that's an idea of like a time type that you are. So there's they call them larks and owls, so morning larks and night owls. And different people will just genetically be that. But then you can also train yourself to be able to produce like your best efforts by consistently training at a certain time. So yeah, just an interesting one there for like application to high performance as well.
Yeah, there you go, guys. So there's a lot of really, really good, interesting, useful feedback, advice there. And my final thought is like, don't underestimate the importance of high quality sleep.
Absolutely.
It is so important, and it's the thing that so many people get wrong. So many people want to go out and party and stay up all night, and then expect their bodies to function, and then question the exercise program they're doing or the coach they're working with because they're not getting the results they want. And Rad mentioned it. It could have been on a different podcast episode, and we've talked about this a lot. Exercise is the stimulus, but it's the positive adaptations to exercise that you get the results from. You cannot do one and then expect the other if you're not creating an environment that is going to nurture that positive adaptation, because there are also, as Phil's pointed out many times, negative adaptations to exercise that can occur. Yep. If you get the dosage wrong, and not just necessarily the dosage in the time you spend exercising or the intensity you spend exercising or the quality of form and technique that you practice when you exercise, the dosage can be wrong when combined with how your all the other stress mechanisms in your life. And one of the main worst stress mechanisms in your life can be lack of sleep or sleep deprivation. So if you can be getting everything right, but if you're not getting enough sleep, the dosage of everything in your life will be wrong.
Yep. And just remember, there is lots of genetic variability. So you might see there's like outliers who can like seemingly perform well on like very low levels and whatever, but that doesn't mean that there's always going to be outliers of these sort of things. So don't think that just because one person can do it, that's necessarily going to be optimal for everybody. So
yeah, absolutely. All right, everyone, if you want to connect further with Phil, he can be found on Instagram at ADPTphysio, and you can book in for an in-person or online session with Phil at adpt.physio. Thanks again for coming and joining us on the show, Phil. It's always great to have you here.
Yep, always enjoy it.
And beautiful. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in and listening to another awesome episode. We'll see you in our next episode of the Sound of Movement podcast.